Hey there, I'm Victoria, and welcome to the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast. I am absolutely delighted that you are here. Today is a little bit of a sad day for me personally. My aunt passed away just a couple of days ago. Today is her visitation, tomorrow's the funeral, and as many of you know, my dad just passed away in October of last year. So here we are about 6 months later with another kind of major death in our family. And it sent really both my sister and me and my mom, especially my poor mom, it's her sister, last living sibling. It sent us into a bit of a tailspin and kind of reopened some of the grief that we've already been going through with losing my dad. So it's a hard thing. Here we are again with another layer of grief, but I am comforted to know that none of this catches God by surprise. This is a divine interruption in my life and my family's life here on this earth, and everything is going to be okay. But I did want to let you know that. Also, on Saturday, just a recent Saturday, I was able to speak at South Fork Christian Church in Verona, Kentucky, and it was such a wonderful experience. I took them through the secret garden of your mind, this particular teaching that I have, where I actually teach that thought loop reset, the process, which is powered by Choose, CHOOSE, powered by Choose framework and the Holy Spirit. I like to add that on there because otherwise it seems something a little bit distant from God, which I would never want that to seem or to be. And that experience at the church was so uplifting for me. The feedback that I received, the interest that they had, it was more like a workshop in a way, because there were a lot of interruptions and questions and dialogue and a couple of breakout sessions, and it was so enjoyable on my part. First of all, I haven't been in a teaching role, quote, a teaching role in a while in front of live students. I still teach online and have done that for a long time. So to be in a, quote, classroom or to be present physically in front of women just like I am who are hungry for God's word, who are hungry for transformation in their lives, it was so meaningful to me and very, very special time. So thank you, South Fork Christian Church. I appreciated that opportunity to speak to your women and to encourage their hearts and to talk about the amazing, nothing short of miraculous work that God can do in each of our hearts. That's the cry of our hearts, isn't it? For transformation. There's some little areas about our own personalities, our character, where we want refinement. We want to continue to grow to be more like Christ, less of us, more like Christ, which segues perfectly into what today's episode is all about. It's reflective of an issue in my life, something I just realized, and I wanted to get to the bottom of. My husband, Jim, and I were having an argument. Although he apologized and admitted, like, I'm sorry for doing that and I want to change, that sort of thing. What I found myself doing was repeatedly bringing up the offense and kind of turning the screw on it and just ruminating on it and not letting that go. In fact, it was a very ungodly approach on my part. It was as if I was trying to just like dig it in the ground, just keep accusing and accusing and accusing, when really that's not what God would have us do. It made me think of the woman who was caught in adultery. Do you remember where, and I've seen like dramatic depictions of that, where the woman is lying on the ground and she's been treated so poorly by all the religious leaders of the day. And poor lady, right? Or maybe even the woman at the well who had such a history with so many husbands and was currently living with a man. Just all those kinds of issues that were constantly put in their faces, so much so that it was to a level of almost inciting shame, or just trying to really get at someone. It sounds really mean and vicious. For Jesus and the woman caught in adultery, do you remember what he said to everyone who was gathered around, and the men? It was like, okay, who wants to throw the first stone? Who has never sinned? Who's going to throw this first stone to kill her, essentially, because that would have been her punishment, essentially, for that type of sinful behavior. The indictment on that would have been death because she had committed adultery. And so nobody said anything. Nobody was able to do anything. And that's that famous moment in the life of Jesus when he starts writing on the sand, right? We don't know what he said. There have been so many speculations. Scholars have said, oh, he wrote the names of people who had also committed adultery, the men with her, possibly. So many things are speculated that he may have written, but that's not really the point. The point here is that when they had all left, because no one was willing to cast a stone against that type of question that Jesus asked them, she was left there, and he basically said to her, go and sin no more. And then we know all about forgiveness and all of that. But my point, and what I was wanting to research just a little bit more and to kind of uncover in my own self, is why do I even want to do that? Why do I want to keep repeating the offense and just going over it again and again and again and again, and in such a hurtful way? It's not like I'm trying to solve the conflict, right? Necessarily. I'm not trying to resolve that issue at hand. I just want to keep blaming, keep turning the screw, and just deeper and deeper, right? And as a matter of fact, as I was praying through this, and I was thinking about the instances when someone just wanted to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And this little aspect might be left better for the end of the show, but I want to say it now because during my quiet time and my prayer time, as I was analyzing how Jim and I are learning to treat each other within our marriage, I was asking the Lord, well, where is that in the Bible? Who just wanted to accuse and accuse and accuse and accuse? Do you know who I thought of? I thought of Jesus on the cross and how those nails were just driven deeper and deeper into his hands and feet. And I thought, gosh, in a way, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing that to my own husband. And I should have prefaced all of this with a minor offense. I mean, a minor offense. If we could categorize offenses and we could go from moral to immoral, I mean, it's not even really close to immoral type of behavior. It's just minor offenses. I'm going to use an example in this show to give you a better notion of what I'm talking about and how this looked for us. So let me go get into some of that at this point, because there's also a moment many of us find ourselves in, but we don't always understand while we're in it. It's that moment when someone lets you down. I'm not talking about in it, like I said, in a huge catastrophic way, but in a small, perhaps even repeated way. They said they wouldn't do something again, for example. They meant it. They even apologized the last time, and then it happens again. And God only knows how many times I have told someone, I won't do it again, and then I go and do it. I mean, I even tell that to myself when it comes to my choices for the food choices that I make. Yesterday was kind of a long and trying day for me, and we landed over at Jim's mom's for just a few minutes to help her with something that she was working on, and they have every known candy in the world there. It's like a candy shop, and I'm not kidding you. Sweets and, just like going to your grandmother's probably. There's everything there that you can eat. And one of my favorite candies is chocolate covered raisins. And before I knew it, I had already been thinking about it because I knew I was going to go over there. And I thought, this is where our thoughts are so important. I started engaging thoughts that would justify why I needed to eat chocolate covered raisins that day. I know it's ridiculous, but that's what we do, isn't it? We give ourselves some sort of moral licensing. Just go ahead and eat it. You'll work it off later. It doesn't matter. It's just a little sugar. When really, I try to limit my sugar intake because that's very important to me. I want to have strong muscles. I don't want to have inflammation. I don't want to have type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia from increasing my insulin levels and just that whole thing, right? So all that to say is that I can even make myself promises, and then all of a sudden it happens again. And then I shame myself. So maybe if you're not in the position where you're either blaming someone else for repeated behavior and mistakes that they make, or whether you're blaming yourself, whether you're on either ends of that, receiving it or dishing it out, I think you're going to relate to this show, and you're going to want to tune in because it's going to offer you clarity. Matter of fact, this was a huge aha moment for me. I couldn't almost believe what I was learning as I continued to research through all of this. that behavior happens again. And then something rises in you when someone promises you, it could be a friend, it could be a child, it could be a spouse, and they say, look, I'm not going to do that again. It's something that kind of has pricked you. And I'm talking about minor, not major again. And they do it. But in you, it's not just irritation. It's not just disappointment, but it's a kind of pressure that's building up in you. It's a need to make sure that they feel it. And see, that's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, oh, you got to know, you got to understand how your choice impacted me. And it's one thing to say that and be transparent and honest and present that. It's another thing to just want to keep driving the nail, keep driving it and pounding and pounding and pounding it. All right. That's different. That ruminating on it, the explaining it again and again, to go back over it again and again, to say, do you understand what this is doing to me? Over and again. And even after they say, I'm sorry, and they mean it, you're still not done. Your mind keeps going. You replay it, you reword it, you press it in again. There's a part of me that doesn't want to let it go. And that's what I couldn't figure out. I'm like, why is there a part of me that doesn't want to let this go? Because letting it go would feel like it just didn't really matter. What is happening in my brain to lock into a situation like that and to not want to let it go? Why was it so hard for me to release it, just to forgive and go on? And how do you respond in a way that actually creates change instead of keeping you stuck? And you may even take this to the point of being in, let's say, a marriage where there's an addiction involved. We already did the whole codependency series. You might want to go back and catch that 3-part series. Just aired just a few weeks ago. We could even be talking about something like this. And maybe if your spouse is doing something unhealthy within your marriage and it's repeatedly happening, that's a more serious offense that we're talking about. But this episode still may explain what I discovered about myself and about why I kept doing that, may explain something for you as well, like why you have the need to keep going, and just pounding deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And that's where we're going to today. Because if you've ever been caught in that cycle, you're not just dealing with conflict, you're dealing with a thought loop in your brain, and your brain is just reinforcing that thought loop. And my whole ministry is set on offering you a toxic thought loop reset. And that's really what I've been in need of. I just didn't know it. And I wanted to dig down a little bit deeper into that. But once you understand that reinforced cycle that's going on in your brain, then you too can break it. So I'm going to give you a story here. And this is a fictional story, but I think it's going to drive home the point of what I'm trying to say right now. Okay, so let's just step into this story for a moment. Emily, we'll call her Emily. She's standing in her kitchen. Dinner is ready. The house is quiet. She glances over at the clock, 7:12. And her thought is, he said 6:30. Her thoughts start before he even walks in. You ever been there? And these are the thoughts that she might have been thinking in her mind. He's late again. He's doing it again. Why do I even believe him? How do I believe him when he tells me next time that he's going to be home by 6:30? This is exactly what he said wouldn't happen. Okay, do you see the rumination that's beginning to start in Emily's mind? She's in that cycle. Now, all that's happened is he's late again. She does not even know why. He could have been in an accident. He could be helping someone along the side of the road who has a flat tire. He could have been on an important call. I mean, there are so many reasons why he might be late, but she doesn't even have any margin of thought of, to give him any kind of grace in that moment, because her brain is already, she's thinking those in a toxic kind of cycle. She's ruminating on that, and it's easy for her brain just to take off with that. So can you imagine, by the time that Jason, we'll call Jason her husband's name, by the time he actually opens the door, her emotional reaction has already been building. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. Traffic was worse than I expected. Emily responds almost immediately. You said that 3 days ago and the day before that. He says, I said, I'm sorry. But she keeps going because something inside her has not settled yet. Then it gets emotionally heated, right? But this is what you told me. You said you would be here by 6:30. You said you were reprioritizing. You said, and you didn't. And there they go, like horses in a race, just galloping all over the place, right? And at each other. And that's something similar that was happening over a minor fence with Jim that I wanted to get to the bottom of personally. You need to know, though, that the loop in Emily's brain, even in my brain, it didn't start when the offense occurred necessarily, or in this case, when Jason walked in. That's not when the looping actually started. It started at the moments her thoughts began interpreting what his lateness actually meant. Same thing for me. That's at the point where, we're triggered a little bit, and then boom, off to the races into this toxic thought loop and spiral. Off we go. And her brain is not just registering time, it's registering the violation of expectation. Think about those three words: violation of expectation. Think about your expectations and just what they mean to you. It's like you're setting yourself up when you have those kinds of expectations. You're setting yourself up for, if something doesn't meet that, it's going to be less than, and that's when the conflict and the ruminating and the toxic thought loop action is going to begin. When Jason said, "I'll be home on time," her brain formed a prediction. That's another important key here. She's like, okay, that is what I can rely on. That prediction now, he said he'd be on time whenever he says he's coming home. So I'm going to rely on that prediction. That became her expectation. And when the prediction is broken, the brain sends out a signal that something is off. I'm really distilling this down for you. And I can so clearly see that that's what was happening in my own brain. It was a threat, right? Something is off. The prediction didn't come through. Something happened, which was so disturbing for me. That activates emotional processing, especially in the amygdala. That's where we are, the amygdala. That's the threat center of your brain, the fight, flight, freeze. That's where that gets you. And so now Emily's system, her brain began saying to her, is this safe? Because my expectation was not met, because the prediction that was there was broken, I'm asking myself, is this safe? Is this consistent? And can I trust this pattern? Then the thoughts begin stacking their meaning, like, this keeps happening. He's not prioritizing me. Okay, now we're adding in a little bit of value judgment, right? He doesn't care about me. He's not prioritizing me. All that kind of mind reading, cognitive distortion kind of comes to the foreground as well. And ultimately you're thinking, I just can't rely on him. And that's the moment that loop actually is forming in your brain. And here's where it actually deepens. Emily didn't grow up in a home where promises were steady. And I wonder about you, did you grow up in a home where promises were steady? You can type in the comments if you're watching on YouTube what it was like for you, or as you reflect back, was your home life growing up, was it steady? Was it predictable? Were most of your expectations met as a kid, or was there some degree of instability there? And, just a little bit of discomfort growing up, because Emily's father was well respected. He was successful, but he was unpredictable. He also would say, hey, I'll be there. And sometimes he was, but other times his busy work schedule shifted everything for him. So plans had to change, expectations fell apart, conversations never resolved. They just circled. Do you see the loop that we're talking about? And hey, I'm trying to bring this to you because I want you to really listen. This is for 21st century Christian women like you, like me. We're all running this race together. We're doing life together, and it's messy. My desire is to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. Yes. But I also want less of me and more of him. God tells me, he tells you that you bear his image and you're working out your salvation. And it takes effort on our parts to grow to become more like Christ and to put Christ on us each and every day. That's where I'm trying to bring the practical aspects into, okay, how do we do this? Because it is hard. And for some of us, we have to learn new thought loops, right? We have to do that thought loop reset often. That would be me. And the hopeful message here is it's doable. This is a proven kind of brain science backed approach to living your best thought life, which will allow you to live your best life, which will allow you to influence others for Christ. You are bearing the torch for Christ. You are shining the light of the Spirit that's inside you. And your fingers are always pointing back to Christ. But we kind of boil it down here on the show to, okay, let's talk real life, real examples, the real mess, the real conflict that we sometimes go through. You're not alone in your conflict. Don't think that every Christian has her act together. That is so not true. There's got to be measure of grace for all of us as we're doing our very best. God does the heavy lifting. Our Heavenly Father does the heavy lifting in this process. We rely on Him. We can rest in Him. We are yoked to Him. But in the meantime, this is some of what we are responsible for. And I love talking about our thoughts because it was after I came through a deep depression about 10 years ago that it occurred to me that if my thoughts got me in that deep depression, then by golly, my thoughts could get me out with a whole lot of God's help. And that's exactly what happened. So all of a sudden, for Emily, even as a child, her nervous system learned very early, at an early age, that if you don't address it, it won't change. And if you don't press it, it's going to repeat. That was what was modeled for her. So now here she is, fast forward with her husband. She's standing in her kitchen. She's just not responding to Jason. She's responding to a very familiar pattern that her brain recognizes. It's essentially what we call a trigger. Now, she's not thinking as she's, the dinner's ready and everything's getting cold, and he's now 45 minutes late, hasn't called, hasn't texted. And let me tell you, that would irritate the dickens out of me, but I probably would have called my husband. I would have just said, hey, where are you? What's going on? I mean, I don't think I would have just kept waiting, but who knows how they respond to each other or what they do. But that's probably what I would have done if he's supposed to be here and he's not, that kind of thing. Because I would also be legitimately concerned. And I would want to kind of circumvent any kind of triggering or whatever in my mind and just getting into all that rumination and fueling the anxiety. But she has those triggers going unbeknownst to her. And so it's very easy for her to fall into the pattern that she saw modeled. For you and for me, we're not going to blame our parents for our behavior. That to me is not godly. We can look at the behavior of our parents, their parents, and on back generationally. We can see what sins were passed down, what strongholds were there. Sure, that's wise to do. But now you and I, we're not finger pointing to our parents and it's their fault. It's their fault. This is why I'm like I am. No, because we want to always say, Father, you created me. You have good things for me to do. Help me be transformed by the renewing of my mind, and help me to become more like you and to behave like you and to do what Jesus does, that sort of thing. That's on us now. And we, with God's help, we can, goodness, he says we can scale a mountain, scale a wall with his help. There's nothing that's out of his reach when it comes to our own character development and change. So let's go back into the conversation. Jason is now leaning in on the counter and he's like, I don't know what else you want me to say. All right, because she's just turning and turning and turning that screw, right? Just like I have a tendency to do. That lands really hard because what Emily hears when he says, I don't know what you want me to do. Emily hears, this isn't a big deal. And there's nothing quite like hearing those words, right? This isn't a big deal, to really incite some kind of angst within you. Because if you feel like what's important to you is not important to someone else, it only raises your stress hormone, right? She presses in again and she's like, it's not just tonight. It's every time you say you won't do something and then you do it anyway. Now, Jason feels something shift inside of him because what he hears is this: husband, you're failing. You are not enough for me. You are disappointing me. That's what he hears. Now, that's not what she wants to say. she just wants to return to a level of safety, right? But what he does as a result is he starts to withdraw. He gives shorter answers, less engagement. And Emily then interprets that as he really doesn't care about me. And now the loop is in full swing. It's fully active. This is the classic pursue withdraw dynamic. I didn't know that's what it was called, but you can see how someone is pursuing hot and heavy, hot and heavy, hot and heavy, hot and heavy, and the person on the other end, it's too much for them. That dynamic is so stressful for them, and so they just withdraw, they retreat. Because after all, both players, both husband and wife, essentially are in the amygdala. They're in that emotionally flared up and amplified state right now, especially if voices raise and the discussion becomes a little bit heated. And so she presses to feel safe. He pulls back to feel safe. Do you see that push and that pull, the press and the pull back? Both are wanting to feel safe. Both are wanting to return to that state of emotional regulation and peace and calm, right? I think everybody wants that. I know I want that. But I want to talk now about something else that's so important, because are all of these moments, and I mentioned this just a little bit ago, are they the same level of betrayal? Absolutely not. There are different levels. At the surface, Jason being late is simply a low level reliability breach. Okay, it's still a breach, but it's very low level. But when it becomes a pattern, it shifts a bit, because it's not about the time and that he was late. It's about predictability that I talked about a moment ago. And when it connects to a deeper meaning, like, can I trust you and do I matter? It begins to feel like a value level violation. Do you see what started very, very small, low level reliability breach was really about trust, safety, predictability, and then ultimately it connected much deeper to a value level violation, not because the act itself changed, but because of what that act represented. I always heard that it's never about the toilet seat being up. Like guys always leave the toilet seat up, apparently. It's never about the socks on the floor. It's not about the surface issues, is it? It tends to be there's some other issue, some other loop that's going on in the brains of both parties that gives it additional meaning, a deeper sense of meaning. And if that's not repaired well, your brain can begin to code it as something even deeper, like a threat to your emotional safety. So in the intensity that Emily was feeling, it's not random. It's her brain trying to restore stability. That was my aha moment. When I asked the Lord, why is it that I just want to hammer and hammer and hammer on this thing? Why? Because it's fairly minor. But why is it that I want to just keep pounding on this and pounding and pounding and pounding? And then I realized that it was simply to restore stability. That was like a light bulb going off for me. It really explained a lot for me, but here's where that loop becomes unhealthy. Instead of resolving the issue, the brain shifts into rumination, replaying, re-explaining, re-accusing. And I never considered myself to be an accusative person, but I found myself accusing, re-accusing, re-accusing, re-accusing on the same thing. Because my false belief was, if I press this enough, it will finally change. And if your parents ever pressed something enough thinking it would finally change, chances are it never did. And if you continue to press something and press thinking it will change, the chances are your pressing is not going to be what causes the change that you're looking for. Actually, in fact, repeated accusation often produces the opposite of what you're looking for, which is defensiveness, shutdown, and distance. Scripture speaks directly to this tension that I have felt, that you may have felt. In James 1:19, it tells us to be quick to listen. You can finish this, can't you? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. But in those moments when things are heated and when we're in that toxic thought loop, when we're there, where our thoughts are already, they're going on overdrive already. When the husband walks in the door, he doesn't stand a chance. We have to learn to reverse that and to go back to biblical precept of being quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For me, for Emily, in those moments, I am quick to speak. Are you? And I'm slow to truly understand what's underneath that, what's going on underneath that. Usually it takes me a day to process it. I have to get back to it the next day in my prayer time and really go over it. And it was this time when something happened more recently that I'm like, I can't believe that one of the reasons that I keep pressing so hard is because I'm trying to restore safety and stability in my own heart. So curious to me. It made me feel like sorry for myself. Like, okay, Victoria, I mean, in a good way, like I understood something that I didn't understand before, which meant it kind of made sense why I was doing that, because I was really giving myself a hard time about doing that. There's the call also from Galatians 1 that says not to exhaust someone with correction, but to bring them back with care. So all of that re-emphasis, that re-accusing has to go. It's never going to work. So let's talk about, okay, we got it. We understand. But what does it take to actually break the loop? What am I going to do differently the next time this happens? What will you do the next time when something like this happens to you and you find yourself in the same old cycle, trying to solve some conflict? And maybe it's a repeated issue. Maybe you repeatedly do something or your partner does. How are you going to break that cycle, break the loop? So let's move forward with Emily's story, because it does happen again. Another night, there's another late arrival, same opportunity, but this time Emily is aware. She feels the thought rise. Here we go again. And this is where everything changes. She has to be cognitively aware of what she's thinking, right? She has to recognize her thoughts. That's called metacognition. So she has to think about what she's thinking about. And she did in this case, because this time she paused. And pausing has got to be our ninja sword. We just pull it out, because the pause is something you can do in almost every situation that is trying or difficult for you. Take a pause, just stop, halt, just for a second. You might be amazed at what God can do in the middle of that pause, when you stop, when you train your brain to stop. And that's what she did. She was starting to flare up and rise up in her, here we go again, same old, but instead she paused, and that's where everything starts to change. So she walks through this differently now. First, she separates the issue from Jason's identity. Instead of you never follow through, which, by the way, that is absolute all or nothing thinking. Even that isn't a true statement coming out of her mouth, because the word never, you almost never can use never, okay? It's not going to work. She's also attacking him, right? So this time she says, instead, you might try this, when you're late, after saying you wouldn't be, it makes me feel unsettled. Now she can relax, because that's clear, it's specific, and it's grounded, right? She's simply stating how she feels. I can remember learning in psychology class, don't do the you, but instead do I, like I feel kind of things, because that's less charged. It's not accusatory that way. Second, she limits the repetition. That's so critically important. This is what I'm going to try next time. She doesn't bring in last week, last month, or every example she can think of when her husband, Jason, was late or didn't do something that he said he would do. She stays with this very moment, the present moment, because she understands now that repeating, that just driving deeper and deeper and deeper, the re-accusation, only increases the pressure. It does not give clarity to anyone. Third, she shifts from accusation, which she needs to request. What would actually help you follow through next time, Jason? That's what she asks him. So she pauses. She says how she feels, and she keeps it to the moment. She doesn't bring up every past event, just that checklist, the laundry list. She doesn't bring that up. And then she engages him with a question like, we're on the same team. That's what I tell Jim. Jim and I have this, and we're fighting for our marriage, and we don't want to fight against each other in our marriage, right? And so we're fighting on the same team here. So let's, you and I together, troubleshoot this and figure out what is going to actually help to follow through with the next time. That is solutions oriented. That is a godly position to take. And now Jason, he's actually thinking instead of having to defend, because she doesn't even know what happened other than traffic. But I mean, he did give that excuse, but there could have been other things. Maybe it was later out the door. I mean, I can think of so many reasons why someone might be late. However, the next thing is critical as well, because she names the real issue here. She says, this makes me feel, she goes back to the I, her own personal feeling here. This makes me feel that I can't rely on you sometimes. Not, this makes me feel I can never rely on you. No, this makes me feel like sometimes I can't rely on you. And that's frightful to me. Something along those lines. It's honest, it's open, and it's really the issue at hand, isn't it? Because now they're talking about trust, not just about the time he was late coming home. Fifth, she practices proportion. And I love this. And this is what I'm practicing. And this is what I told myself after the one issue between Jim and me. I could tell myself, hey, this matters, but it's not everything. This matters, but it's not everything. Because when I look at my husband, he is a wonderful man of God. He's not perfect, and neither am I. No one is. But if I were to count off all the things that he, quote, does right, I would never stop writing. And the few things that I think are missteps on his part, or times he doesn't consider me or whatever, they're few and far between. I have seen him consistently demonstrate to me a sacrificial kind of love, which so warms my heart. And some of that's about focus. Do I want to focus on the negative, on the grumbling and griping that can no, all of that in my marriage? Or do I want to look at the blessing that he is, pull back and see the bigger picture here? Yes, this matters, but it's not everything. So what that does, when you realize that, when you get that shift in perspective, it slows your response instead of escalating it. The sixth thing she can do is she chooses forgiveness as a direction, not a feeling, but a decision. I'm not going to keep pressing this once we've discussed it. That's what she can tell Jason. I'm not going to keep pressing this like I used to. I used to press this, but I'm not going to do that anymore. She releases the loop. And you know what? The first time that she does this, it's going to be so difficult. It's going to be a challenge for her, because your brain loves familiarity. It loves the loops that it's in. It's comfort. It's ease in your brain. Anytime your brain is trying to learn something new, a new pattern of thought, a new positive thought loop, a new thought loop reset, anytime you're trying to do that, there's got to be friction, because it's something new. You're building new neural pathways. Everything's connecting and lighting up in a new way. It's a new path. Imagine yourself going through the jungle with a machete. I mean, the first time through, you'd be just hacking and hacking, and you wouldn't be going very far, and it would be very frustrating. But don't quit. Don't give up. You will reap a reward as you are partnering with the Lord in rewiring your brain and being transformed by the renewing of your mind. And finally, you know what happens as a result? Jason responds differently too. And he says, okay, I'm going to leave earlier tomorrow from the office. So he's going to actually leave earlier. And he goes further to say, I'm going to set an alarm so I don't keep doing this. Because he analyzes also, and he realizes that apologies don't rebuild trust. Consistency does. And this is the shift. The goal is not to stop feeling hurt. The goal is to stop letting your thoughts spiral into patterns that keep you stuck. You're going to be hurt. I'm going to be hurt. You're going to hurt. I'm going to hurt. That's natural within any kind of important relationship that you may have. But that compulsion that you may have, or that I have, to accuse repeatedly is not just emotional. It's neurological. It's a stress response. It's a pattern. It's a loop. And when it's unmanaged, it becomes rumination, relational pressure, and ultimately disconnection, even though what you really wanted was closeness. So here's the question to carry with you as I sign off here. The next time that you, and I'm telling myself this too, feel the urge to press, to repeat, to say it again, pause and ask, what am I making this mean? What am I trying to secure right now? And is the way I'm thinking about this helping or keeping me stuck? Because that moment, that pause is where transformation actually begins, not just in your relationship, but also in your mind. And before I let you go, I know some of you are thinking, well, that sounds great for Emily and Jason, and look how they handled that. Well, I can tell you that it just takes one person to start. Your husband, your spouse's responses may not be this like little picture, this image that I have painted here for you today. And I realize that makes it difficult too. You may not even get an apology. So I would encourage you in that case to take all of your angst, your emotions, and take them all to the Lord, because God, above everyone else who walks the face of this earth, is trustworthy. And He is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He will never leave or forsake you. And He longs to be the secure tower. His name is a secure tower. He longs to be a refuge for you in all kinds of trials that you may face. But I like to kind of just tinker around with, what am I thinking about? And if it's a problem for me, I know it's a problem for somebody else. And I wanted to share that aha moment that I had about why I kept pressing, why I kept accusing. It's because my heart longed for restorative peace, tranquility, and stability. And maybe I had a few other childhood triggers going in there as well. But the point is, we may not get that with another person on this earth, but we can certainly have that with our Heavenly Father and with the Holy Spirit who is within us, who is our comforter and our guide. He's our paraclete. He is there for us. And if you're not getting that from another person, lean in to the Lord. And I know that sounds kind of cliched, and we all want it within our relationships, right? But you may not be able to make someone else change, but you can be the change. You can change with God's help by relying on Him. He will help you, and He does all the heavy lifting in this mind renewal and transformation process. He is the potter, and you are the clay. So I love you dearly. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless.